Are you more likely to get a speeding ticket if you're using your cell phone while driving, or are those two things completely unrelated? Think about that for just a second. In a real-world study of 755 drivers, some got tickets and some didn't. Some were glued to their cell phones and others weren't. But how do we mathematically prove if the cell phone actually caused the ticket or if it's just total random chance? Well, that is exactly the puzzle we're solving today. By the end of this lecture, you're going to fully understand the chi-square test of independence. You'll know the exact formula behind it, and most importantly, you'll know how to mathematically prove if two factors are truly connected using real-world data. Let's jump right into our first major question. Are these factors actually connected? Let's break down the textbook jargon into plain English. The test of independence uses a contingency table of observed values to figure out if two factors are independent. What does that actually mean? We're taking two categorical variables, like cell phone use and speeding tickets, and checking if one influences the other. If they don't influence each other at all, they're independent. If they do, they're dependent. Simple as that. So before we crunch any numbers, we need to set up the rules of the game. Like any statistical test, we start with a null hypothesis, or H0, and an alternative hypothesis, or HA. The absolutely crucial thing to remember here is that for the test of independence, the null hypothesis always assumes the factors are independent. It assumes there's absolutely zero connection between the two. Think of the null hypothesis as a super skeptical scientist standing there saying, nope, nothing to see here, these variables have absolutely nothing to do with each other. And this table right here is how we gather the data to prove that scientists wrong. Let's look at our main example for today. This is real data from a survey of 839 adult volunteers. Our first factor over on the left is their student status. Are they in community college, a four-year college, or are they non-students? The second factor across the top is how many hours they volunteer per week. These are our observed values. It's the raw, on-the-ground data we literally observed and tallied up. And our big question is, does the number of hours you volunteer depend on your student status? To answer that, we have to ask a hypothetical question. What exactly would our data look like if the null hypothesis was perfectly true? That leads us straight into calculating our expected values. If student status and volunteer hours have literally nothing to do with each other, we can predict exactly how many people should be in each box of our table. And the formula is beautifully simple. For any given cell, you just multiply its row total by its column total, and then divide that result by the total number surveyed. Let's try it out on the top left cell, community college students who volunteer 1 to 3 hours. The row total for community college was 255, the column total for the 1 to 3 hour group was 298. The grand total of all volunteers, 839. So we take 255 times 298, divide by 839, and we get 90.57. Meaning, if these two factors have absolutely zero connection, we'd expect to see exactly 90.57 people in this box. But wait a minute, our actual observed data showed 111 people. So right away, we're seeing a mathematical gap between what we expect and what we actually observed. But hold on, stop right there. This is a critical rule you absolutely cannot forget. 5. The expected value for every single cell in your table has to be at least 5 to use this specific statistical test. If you do your expected calculations and you see a 2 or a 4 sitting in one of those boxes, you can't run a reliable chi-square test. So always check your expected values first. Now that we've got our observed values from the survey and our calculated expected values, we can move on to the actual chi-square formula. Okay, I know this formula might look a little intense at first glance, but it's really just measuring distance. All you do is take your observed value, subtract the expected value, square that difference, and divide by the expected value. Then you just add up those results for every single cell in your table. If your observed data is super close to what you expected, this final number is going to be tiny. But if they're far apart, like our 111 observed versus 91 expected, this number is going to grow pretty fast. Now, let me ask you a quick question to see if we're tracking. Why is the test of independence literally always a right-tailed test? Think about the formula we just walked through. Because we are squaring the differences between our observed and expected numbers, our test statistic is guaranteed to be positive. If the variables actually are dependent, that squared difference creates a huge test statistic, and that massive number gets pushed way out into the right tail of the curve. There's simply no negative direction to go. To figure out exactly where our cutoff line is on that curve, we need to calculate our degrees of freedom, or DF. It's super easy. Step 1, subtract 1 from your number of columns. Step 2, subtract 1 from your number of rows. Step 3, multiply those two numbers together. For our volunteer table, we had 3 columns for hours and 3 rows for student types. So 3 minus 1 is 2, and 3 minus 1 is 2. 2 times 2 gives us exactly 4 degrees of freedom. All right, all the mathematical heavy lifting is done. It is time to bring it all together and make our final decision. So if we ran all 9 cells of our volunteer data through that distance formula, our total chi-square test statistic comes out to 12.99. With 4 degrees of freedom, a statistical calculator tells us that gives a p-value of 0.0113. Now, we just compare that p-value to our alpha, the significance level. Since we weren't given a specific alpha for this problem, we just use the standard 0.05 or 5%. And here is how we make our final call. Because our p-value of 0.0113 is clearly less than our alpha of 0.05, we reject the null hypothesis. Remember that highly skeptical scientists from earlier? We just mathematically proved them wrong. Because the probability of seeing this massive gap between observed and expected by pure random chance is only about 1%, we have sufficient evidence to confidently say that the number of hours volunteered and the type of student are absolutely dependent on one another. Your student status really does impact how much time you give. Let's do a really quick recap to make sure this all sticks. First, the null hypothesis always assumes independence, that the variables don't affect each other. Second, your expected values must be 5 or greater in every cell. Third, this test is always right-tailed because of those squared differences. And finally, just compare your p-value to alpha. If p is low, the null must go. I want to leave you with one quick thought exercise. What if we added a 4th group, let's say teenagers, to the rows of our volunteer study? How would that change our degrees of freedom? Remember that formula? We'd now have 4 rows and 3 columns. I'll let you do the math on that and figure out how that one simple addition shifts